Assalamu alaikum. Today's topic is applications of Raman spectroscopy. We have different spectroscopic techniques like X-ray diffraction, nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, electron diffraction, UV visible spectroscopy, infrared spectroscopy and Raman spectroscopy, etc. Now XRD is a standard method for determining the structure in inorganic systems. However, X-ray diffraction has two limitations. Number one, it is applicable only to solids. However, some of the reacting molecules may exist in the form of gases, and in those special cases, the X-ray diffraction technique fails. Secondly, X-ray diffraction is unable to differentiate between the following bonds like CN and C, OCN NCO, and it cannot differentiate between SCN and NCS. In comparison to X-ray diffraction, IR, infrared and Raman techniques of spectroscopy, they are rapid and simple. However, Raman technique is preferred over the IR technique because it has two advantages over IR in inorganic systems. Number one, in Raman spectroscopy, we use laser as radiation sources and the scattered radiations are obtained. Now in this case, both the laser used and the scattered radiation, they are in the visible range. Therefore, we can use glass tubes, ordinary glass tubes made up of Pyrex can be used to hold the sample. However, in infrared spectroscopy, we cannot use these glass tubes because they can absorb infrared radiations. Second, water is very weak Raman scatterer. It does not absorb or absorb a little in Raman spectroscopy, but it gives very broad signals in infrared spectroscopy. Therefore, in Raman spectroscopy, we can use aqueous solutions directly and they cannot be used in IR. In addition to these two advantages that we can perform, we can use ordinary glass tubes made up of Pyrex for containing the sample in Raman spectroscopy, and we can use aqueous solutions directly to analyze the samples. It has two more advantages, that Raman technique is very rapid, and fourth is that it is non-destructive technique and the sample is not destroyed during the process and it can be reused. And the fifth is that Raman spectroscope is compact, light and portable. So these are the advantages of Raman spectrophotometer over IR or XRD. That is why, due to these advantages, Raman spectroscopy has wide applications in many fields. Let us discuss the applications in different fields. Raman spectroscopy finds many applications in different fields, and some of the applications have been mentioned here. The first application is in pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. In pharmaceutical and cosmetics, Raman spectroscopy is used for determining the compound distribution in tablets, blend uniformity. When we have blended different chemicals to form a tablet, whether it is uniform, it has uniform composition or not a uniform composition, whether the blending has been done uniformly or not uniformly. We can find out the powder content or purity of the chemicals, or purity of the tablet. Raw material verification. The raw materials which are used for the formation or synthesis of or making of tablets must be pure. If the raw materials are impure, we will get drugs which will not be beneficial, rather they will be harmful. We can find out the polymorphic forms of different chemicals which are used in drugs, and their effectiveness can be studied by Raman spectroscopy. The crystallinity of chemicals which are present, or the crystallinity of tablets, can be studied. We can find out the contaminant identification. If there are any contaminants present in the tablets or the drugs, they may be harmful. Therefore, we can identify the contaminants. Identification of API. API means active pharmaceutical ingredients. If we know the active pharmaceutical ingredients, we can control their quantities to get the safe tablets or safe drugs. Second application is in geology and mineralogy. In geology and mineralogy, gemstone and mineral identification can be performed through Raman spectroscopy. We can find out whether the given gemstone is ruby or sapphire or emerald, etc. We can find out fluid inclusions in the gemstones. If there are any fluids present in the gemstones, we can also find that. Mineral and phase distribution in rock sections. If we have different sections of rock, we can find out what type of minerals are present in each section of the rock and what is the phase of that mineral, whether it is in solid state, liquid state, or any other state. We can find out we can study the phase transitions. The conversion of one phase of mineral into the other phase can be studied spectroscopically. Mineral behavior can be studied under extreme conditions. What happened to the mineral when we subject it to extreme conditions of temperature, pressure, or stress. The third applications are in carbon materials. The purity of carbon nanotubes can be determined by Raman spectroscopy. Carbon nanotubes are actually fullerenes, and it is believed that the life has started from fullerenes and they have migrated from upper space. Now, electrical properties of carbon nanotubes can be determined by using Raman spectroscopy. We can find out whether in a carbon material sp2 or sp3 structures are present or not present. They are used in hard disk drives. We can find out defects or disorder analysis in carbon materials. The quality of diamond can also be checked by using Raman spectroscopy. The fourth field is semiconductors. It can be used, Raman spectroscopy can be used for characterization of stress and strain. Stress is the force applied per unit length of the semiconductor, and strain is the deformation produced per unit length. So, by using Raman spectroscopy, we can find out the characterization of stress and strain. We can find out the purity of semiconductors. We can also find out the composition of alloys which contain semiconductor. We can also determine the contaminant identification. We can identify the contaminants which may be present in the semiconductor. It can also be used for studying superlattice structures like superconductors or something else. Defect analysis, heterostructures can be studied, and we can study doping effect. Doping is a process in which silicon and germanium, they are mixed with pentavalent or trivalent impurity, and as a result we get n-type and p-type crystals respectively, and these are then used for making diodes and semiconductor diodes and transistors. Now, fifth field in which Raman spectroscopy can be used are the life sciences. We can find out biocompatibility. If we are introducing a drug into the body of an organism, whether it is compatible with that body or that organism or not compatible, so we can resolve compatibility issues. We can study the structure of DNA and RNA. DNA and RNA analysis can be done with Raman spectroscopy. These are the hereditary materials which give an insight into the nature and characteristic properties of the organism. Now, it can also tell us about drug cell interaction. What will be the interaction between drugs which are taken by a person and the cells which are present in the body. We can diagnose diseases by using Raman spectroscopy, and we can analyze even a single cell by Raman spectroscopy, which is called single cell analysis. Characterization of biomolecules. If we have biomolecules, we can identify whether these are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, steroids, etc., and we can find out the bone structure by Raman spectroscopy. The sixth application of Raman spectroscopy is in forensics. Narcotics force, police, anti-terrorism squads and forensic experts use Raman spectroscopy to identify the explosives, the drugs of abuse like heroin or cocaine, polymers, plastics, paints and inks. Plastic paints and inks can be used in any event which happens in the cities. The seventh use of Raman spectroscopy is in art and cultural heritage. Authenticity of a painting or an artifact can be judged through Raman spectroscopy by pigment identification. By knowing the pigment on a painting, we can find out the exact date of the painting on which it was made. Dye identification on textiles. Infrared, to find out, to compare the obtained data, we must have a standard data, and this standard data is provided in the form of IRUG. IRUG stands for Infrared and Raman User Group Database, and it gives the standard values for comparison, so we can find out whether the given artifact or the given painting is the genuine one, it is genuine or not genuine. Allah Hafiz.